So today we have Yash Boghara from Temple University School of Dentistry. Yash, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, bud.
Awesome, awesome. So if you could give us a brief summary of your dental school journey, like where you're from, where you went to
Sure.
undergrad, what you major in, did you take a year off, things like that.
Yeah, sure. So I grew up right outside of Philadelphia in the suburban counties, about 45 minutes from the city of Philadelphia.
Okay.
I went to Temple for undergrad, but my experience was a little different. I did an accelerated dental program at Temple, which was a 3-year undergrad, and then went right into dental school. So that was basically my journey into dental school in terms of an educational standpoint. My degree was a biology degree. But it wasn't a Bachelor of Science, it was a Bachelor of Arts. So instead of taking some of those higher level science classes, I took some more liberal arts classes. So that was a little different. I think with the accelerated program, and I'll touch on this for a minute, is it's a little different than other ones from the ones I applied to initially coming into undergrad. Because a lot of times when you think of an accelerated program, you're thinking of condensing a 4-year program into 3 or maybe 2 years or something like that.
Right.
And in this case, this program's a little different because all it does is it makes your senior year of undergrad into your first year of dental school. So it double dips the credits between undergrad and dental school.
Mhm.
So you're really just doing your first 3 years of classes and then you go right into dental school. Now, the
Wow.
only thing is this program isn't guaranteed. But so far in the history, as long as you kind of hit the markers, which were like a 20 on your DAT, and I think you kept your GPA, I think around like a 3.4, 3.5 or something like that. Those were the minimums. No one's like not gotten in. So,
Right.
and it's not restricting you from applying to any school either.
Okay, so then did you have to take your DAT a little bit earlier in order to,
Yeah, I did.
okay,
So I took it after my second year, typically about the time after I finished organic chemistry. And then I didn't really have any upper level science classes. So all I finished were my core science classes and then took the DAT and then applied in the cycle of going into my junior year, basically. Yeah,
that's
so a year earlier,
okay,
probably.
so then I'm assuming that you didn't, like you said, you didn't have any advanced science classes, so you just had the core. So I
Right.
want to
Yeah.
know how you did, or how did you still do well on the DAT if you didn't necessarily have exposure to all of these higher classes or higher
Right.
science classes? Because a lot of people ask us, like, how can I do well? What resources do I need to use in order to do well on the DAT? And so, yeah, just
Yeah.
want to ask you.
No, definitely. I think those classes will definitely help because when I took them in dental school, I was like, whoa, like this would have made the DAT a lot easier.
Right, right,
Um,
right.
but when I took it, I think, I don't remember the stat off the top of my head. I think I got like a 22 or 23, something like that as my academic average or total science or something like that. But it was right around there. And then my PAT, I think, was like a 24-ish or something like that. But all it really came down to is honestly, I just spent hours on SDN looking at what other people did to be successful. So they'd be like, I got this score, this is what I did. So I kind of just looked at what the people who performed consistently the highest, like what they were using. And then that boot camp was like pretty clutch when it
Yep.
came to studying for my DAT. I don't know how it is now. I think it still is pretty great, but again, it's been about 5 years since I took my DAT.
Right, right, right.
But Ari, the guy who I think who made it, he had a schedule on there, and
It's like
basically
the
I
eight
was
week
like,
program, right?
yeah, right, exactly. And I was like, there's no way I can study for like 3 months. Like, I'm like, I can't do it. It's summertime. Like, I'll probably distract myself more than anything. So I just like hunkered down and like made like a 4-week schedule. And the thing is I kind of played it smart. I was like, well, I just finished OChem 1 and 2. So I'm not really going to spend time reviewing OChem. I'll just jump into the question sets for that. And then since I was a bio major, I think most of the biology came rather easy. So it was more or less just reviewing pretty quickly. So I didn't spend too much time on reviewing the information because it was pretty recent. And I kind of just jumped into questions. And then when I didn't know what was going on or the information that I was being tested on that I felt weak in, I just went back and reviewed it. That's basically how I studied for the DAT. But I guess my key tip for that is just see what other people who did really well on it, and then see what resources they use and then tailor it to using it to your schedule, basically.
Okay, awesome. So, did you have a typical interview, or was it just
Yeah,
kind of like, okay? So you still went through
right.
the interview process. Also, okay, okay,
Correct. Yeah. There was no there was surprisingly, like there was no special preference or like anything that was given to us. We were just treated like a normal student, that were applying just like everybody else to the normal DMD program.
Okay.
And so I don't think they even knew we might have been accelerated students until they actually looked at our application.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
I mean, it's like a good and bad, because you're thinking, you're like, well, like I would think that this would work in my favor. Like I really want to go to your school, and I'm sure it does. But the way we were treated for the interview was just like a normal applicant. So we weren't like treated special or anything like that. And I think that was great, because like, especially during the interview, you're not like, I don't know, I don't want to be like selected out in the whole group and be like, oh,
Right,
and this
right.
is that like kid who did an accelerated program. And everyone looks
you're
at you
younger
like, oh.
and things like that.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
true. And so can you kind of walk us through your interview date? Like, how was everything? Like, did they have a informational session in the beginning, and
Sure.
you all kind of like broke off into groups, or like how'd everything go?
So my interview, it's changed a lot since I was in dental school. And I'll give some insight here, because I sat on the admissions committee for a while
Oh,
while I was in dental school.
awesome.
Yes, I can really give you an insight about how this works a little bit. So it's changed. So mine, when I showed up, it used to only be about 12 people, and it was like an all-day affair where we showed up. They showed us around the school. They gave us a tour. They gave us information about the school. Different people would come and speak to us. And then basically we'd have our interview throughout the day. Temple was known notoriously back then for doing the video recording interviews. So we just basically walked into a room, looked at a microphone, and we just answered a few questions and stuff like that. They've done away with that since. So I'll kind of walk you through how the interview is now and how everyone will get interviewed. It basically still is all day. I think it's like 8 to 5 or like 9 to 4 or something like that. It's basically like a normal school day. You show up, you're with all the students you're going to be interviewing with that day. Usually it's about like, I don't know, between 20 and 30 people. So it's pretty great. There's a good bunch of people. You'll get talked to for maybe about like an hour or two by the director of admissions. The dean will probably stop by. If there's faculty around, some of the directors will stop by. Students will just kind of like flow throughout the day, because they bring you in on a day when the school is actually still like working. We don't have weekend interviews and stuff like that, because they want you to see how it is like in the day to day. So classes are going on, so whoever's around will basically stop by. After that, at some point, I believe you still do the writing section. So they basically just give you a prompt on an iPad and you answer it, and then you go into your interview process basically. And so they interview you first, because what they realized was happening was like we would tell you about the school, and then everyone would basically just go to their interview and reiterate what we told them, right? So it'd be like, Temple's a great clinical school. Then what you'd hear in every single interview is like, I want to come to Temple because it's a great clinical school. Right. So they flipped it, because what they were trying to do is like, I think the reputation of Temple is kind of well known if you look into it, for being a good clinical school, being a pretty big school, good class size, and good camaraderie. But we wanted to see why people wanted to come to Temple for their own reasons. And so they interview you first, and basically it's a one-on-one interview with a professor, and they record the interview because the rest of the committee kind of takes a look at it. And you're basically just having conversations. So it's usually one of our alumni or our professors that are interviewing you. And basically they're just asking you simple questions like, why you want to do dentistry, why Temple Dental, like tell us about yourself basically. And honestly, I think what Temple's really just looking for is like personality. I think that's what we've always kind of like been shooting for. It's like, you don't need the grades and stuff like that, but you just kind of got to be the person that's gonna be able to socialize with the rest of the class, because it's very much a 140 in 140 out mentality, and not so much like, I do this by myself and get through it by myself. You can, but I just don't think that would make for a good experience.
It never is.
Yeah.
Never does.
And then basically once you're done your interview portion, you come back, and then there's like students floating around. And so if you have any questions for them, they'll take you on tours basically once you come back from your interview, once everyone's done their interview with their professor or alumni. Some of the alumni that might have traveled from across the country might, give you a lecture or something like that on what they do and stuff, and just to see like what neat things that they're up to basically. And then after that, they give you a tour. There's food, of course, during the day, and then basically you're on your way. So I want to say like the interview probably starts around 9, but you could be done anywhere between 1 to 4 o'clock, basically, depending on like how long you want to stick around and talk to everybody and stuff like that.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
And so everybody, well, not everybody, but say you get in, you got in,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah.
How was your first year? You know, I
Yeah.
think a lot of schools are changing. Like even my school recently, we switched from just like the traditional way of having classes to now we're doing a more integrated system. So like,
Right.
how was the first year at Temple?
Yeah. So I think I wouldn't say we were like a guinea pig class. I think we were like a few years into that like integrated model. And we didn't really experience it till like our second year. But I would say our first year has been pretty routine in the last few years. Basically, I want to say it starts, the best way to put it is probably like a roller coaster. So you start off like, real slow. They don't like get you on the ground just running. They're kind of like walking you through the process. So you have a few main major science classes each semester, and then you have, as time progresses along between your fall, spring, and summer class, you spend more and more time in like pre-clinic. And so basically that's how they structure it. I think at some point they just try to achieve a 50-50 balance between being in pre-clinic and being in your science classes. But I think the nice thing is that they really try to ease you into it. So your first semester, you're taking biochem, histo, I think a dental materials class, and then you're taking RD1, which is restorative dentistry 1, where you're doing a lot of like waxing and block carving teeth and kind of just getting used to learning dental anatomy and stuff like that.
Right.
And so that's like the main focus of it. Then you transition into anatomy and your operative classes, basically your spring semester. And then we have a summer 1, which is about 6 to 8 weeks that runs from like early May to the end of June, which is no more pre-clinic or anything like that for that semester. It's just a few science classes. So they're basically just half days that you show up for. But, with the online education that we have at school, a lot of times like the professors won't mandate attendance, even though the school wants it. So you could do a lot of stuff at home if you wanted to.
So quick question. Do you
Yeah.
recommend going to class, or do you think it's okay for people to stay at home and still, of course, see the lecture and everything, but you don't think it's necessary?
Yeah, if my dean watches this, he's probably gonna hate me for this, but like honestly, I think it's like it comes down to how you study, basically, right? So I had to go to class because I just knew I wouldn't study if I didn't go. So just being there for me was important. But I had a lot of classmates who could never like pay attention in class, and they made a valid point. They're like, if I can watch the lecture in like 2x speed, basically, and just like figure it out in the half an hour I watch the lecture, then why am I spending an hour in class going back and forth to school? To do that, I'm like, you know what, that makes like perfect sense. And there were times that I did class capture or like just like would study from home and stuff like that, because I'm like, what's the point of going in, especially if you've been exposed to the information before and stuff like that. So
in your case, yeah.
yeah.
But no, I completely agree. I will say that honestly, and I can even like look at my transcript. When I did go to class, I did make better grades, but I definitely do understand how some people, that might not be the best way that they learn. And so, I mean, within dental school, I think that's a process in itself, just really understand how you study and what is the most efficient way for you to study.
Right. Exactly.
And everybody goes through that,
Yeah.
Everybody goes through that.
Yeah, and I think it makes sense. Like you just have to know yourself. I think that's the biggest thing, like how you study and everything. Because if you don't, then I think dental school might be a little bit more of a roller coaster ride. Like for me, I think it was definitely a transition because I wasn't used to the higher level science classes and stuff like that, at least at the volume. I don't think the content was difficult. I think you're just not used to the pace at which dental school kind of runs at. And so my first semester took me some time to figure it out, but I think by the second semester I had it down. And then since then, it's kind of been just modifying the formula of studying more than anything.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, so our viewers, they have a lot of different dental schools that they can choose from. And so I like to ask everybody, what is unique about your school? Because every school has something, right? That makes it
I think so.
Special.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think there's it's like a 2-part answer for me. So there's 2 specific things. And I think one without a doubt is our clinical education. And that's something that makes a lot more sense when you're in clinic, like I said, 3rd and 4th year. It's not something that is like obvious maybe when you show up, but the amount of work that we just do in clinic is like insane. And I think like Temple's still one of those few schools that might be left in the country that you can carve the experience that you want. So everyone has a pretty strong baseline minimum of like requirements that we have to do. But if you want to take it farther from there in terms of like getting exposure to advanced procedures that some of the specialties do, you absolutely can. And I think the nice thing is our faculty aren't ever going to be like, no, you can't do that. They're, as long as you show like proficiency in the information and a willingness to learn and put in the effort, they'll basically walk you through the process and do the procedures with you. And like stuff that you typically maybe do in pros programs or surgery programs and stuff like that, you can still do at Temple. So like full mouth rehabs, if you're in oral surgery, they'll let you go after like impacted wisdom teeth and stuff like that. Like they're not scared to let you do it as long as you show like you know what you're doing basically prior to that. So those are just a few examples. And I think like and overall, like I think the biggest thing is just the camaraderie, and I kind of mentioned it earlier on, but it's very much so a class, and I think that's what attracted me to Temple more than anything. I know that it might seem like I kind of committed to it prior, but because of doing the accelerated program, but I wasn't restricted to applying to other schools, and so. You know, having been around Temple and everything like that, and this alumni base, I think it just like it made sense because everyone's just so well connected. We do everything together. We share notes and stuff like that, whatever we can to help each other out. And I think like the biggest thing was, I never really wanted to go to a school where it was like I was doing things by myself. And what I mean by that is like, you know, if I need to help with something, it wasn't like I had to figure out on my own. And like, and you know, I think the nice thing with Temple is like I can count on my classmates where it's like, hey, I don't know if I understand this, or can someone help me out with this? And you know, there'll be multiple people willing to take their time and help you out. And it's never one of those things where it's like, well, I helped you out, so you owe me now too. It's very much so. It's just like, you know, we're a team and we're gonna get through this together. And that's worked so well through my 4 years here. And you know, the alumni do the same thing too. And I think that's what really spoke to me too, because when the alumni come back and they're willing to take you under their wing, and, you know, they have no interest, a lot of these alumni, if you think about it, in terms of like taking us under their wing, like if you're a dentist from California that went to Temple and came out and he's like, yo, I'll be your mentor. Like it really has no interest, because I have no interest in going to California and stuff like that, you know, that I could be his associate or anything like that. He's just doing it out of like, you know, the sheer generosity of being part of the Temple family. And I think that was probably like the biggest thing that brought me to Temple.
And that's huge. And I think that's another thing that, you know, pre-dents might not necessarily like recognize how big of a thing it actually is until you're actually in school. Because that mentorship, and even like you said, your classmates, that camaraderie, just everybody coming together, it will completely change your dental school experience.
Yeah. No, and I can speak to that right now because of the whole, you know, coronavirus situation going on. But a lot of us, I don't think a lot of students, I think, are focusing on, you know, their licenses and stuff like that and how it's all going to happen. I think that's very valid. But I think inevitably that's going to happen. I think the bigger challenge is like, what do we do when we graduate? Like, is there going to be patience and stuff like that? Is my job still good? And I think a lot of alumni have been great in reaching out and be like, hey, like things are going to be fine here. It might be a little bit tougher, but if you need a job or something like that as a backup or something, if your opportunity falls through, like we have opportunities here. So they've like, you know, they've been nice in reaching out. I didn't even tell them, but they like reached out and they're like, look, we got spots for you and your classmates if you need them and stuff like that, because we don't know how this is all going to pan out in the future. So, and I was like, wow, like I would have never as a pre-dental student thought of that, like truly never have thought of that. And it's kind of like something that came to light after 4 years.
That's awesome. And so now I'm going to ask you to reflect a little bit.
Sure.
Go and talk to your younger self.
Yeah.
While you were going through, I mean, granted you were in the accelerated program, but while you were even just going through the motions of all of that application process, what do you wish you could have told yourself back then?
Like when I was applying to dental school?
Right. If you could just go back and just like, hey, younger me, look.
Fact. I think two things is like, one, it's like, and this is preached always, but it's like just apply early on. You know, I was kind of early to it. I was sometime in June or something like that. But I know with like the current process, you can like fill out all your information earlier and stuff like that. I was like, try to make it as less stressful as possible. So if you can do anything to make that process easier, like, you know, if that means filling out your information on your application like a week early and stuff like that, then definitely do that. And I would say once you apply and you send all your information to your school, also like don't constantly go on SDN and stuff like that and be like, did I hear about a school or stuff like that, or incessantly keep calling the school and stuff, because you're just going to stress out. Typically when you're applying, a lot of times it's the summertime here in America. So it's like, apply, do what you need to do in the first few weeks you need to do it, and then basically just enjoy the rest of the summer, and the schools will eventually reach out to you if you did the work that you needed to do. I think a lot of times I spent that summer like just thinking, I'm like, when am I going to get my interview, like stuff like that. And I'm just like, looking back on it, I was like, I could have definitely had a lot more fun and stuff like that and not been so stressed out by the whole process. And I get it, like it's a lot of your life is like riding on it, and you put a time and effort and energy into it. But literally looking back on them, like it is not the most difficult thing that you'll ever have to do. And so you're gonna like look back and be like, I could have been less stressed by it, definitely through the process.
Awesome. Mm-hmm. Well, man, thank you so much for speaking
absolutely.
today. If our viewers have any questions, is there a preferred method of contact for you?
Honestly, probably like Instagram would make the most sense. You can find me at Dentspire. If that changes, my other Insta is the big Y24. So, if for some reason I change one name or the other or something like that, one of them will remain constant. And I guess if there's any other like lingering questions, or you have like long format questions anyone wants me to answer, they can just email me at yash@temple.edu.
Great. Well, once again, Yash, thank you so much from us and the FutureDDS community. We really do appreciate it. You've been a huge help, and I'm sure a couple of viewers are definitely going to reach out. And
absolutely, you're more than welcome to. So thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
No problem at all. To all of our viewers, make sure that you go ahead and hit the subscribe button. And if you have any questions for us, you can go ahead and DM us at _FutureDDS on Instagram, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. But until next time, we'll see y'all later.